Hi everyone, and my name is Stefania Fortugno. I'm with the Inter-Church Uranium Committee Educational Cooperative in Saskatoon, and that's how I came to be on the Nuclear Issues Working Group. I'm also a lawyer, and I was involved in a 6-year legal battle on behalf of the Inter-Church Uranium Committee in the Federal Court of Canada. And I'll get into that a little bit later, but just to start my slides, I wanted to cover what is the current situation in the province in terms of the number of mines and what's happening. So this is just a list of the existing operating mines. So there's the Key Lake, Rabbit Lake, McLean Lake, Midwest, and MacArthur River, and Cigar Lake. And the next slide will show where most of these are located. It may be hard to see on this map, but on the northeast corner of Saskatchewan, those black dots, those are the main operating mines right now. And Cleft Lake on the western side of that slide, that is one of the older mines that's been abandoned, or is in the process of, I think it's still being decommissioned, or still has to be decommissioned. And if you look at this map, you can see that a lot of the mines are concentrated in one small area of the province, and it disproportionately affects Aboriginal communities that are located in that region, particularly Wollaston Lake, the Fond du Lac, and some of the Métis communities in the center of the province. But Wollaston Lake, I think, is the hardest hit because they have about 5 or 6 of the mines really within 100 to 200 kilometers of their community. So in this next slide, I took these figures from one of the industry pamphlets, kind of proudly boasting about the Saskatchewan reserves, uranium reserves. This is as of December 31st, 2009. So they're looking at U308, which is uranium concentrate, I think. Is that correct?
That's right. That's right. Yes.
Uranium concentrate. And so MacArthur River, this is one of the largest bodies in the province, and it's underground mine. They have 335 million pounds, and the percentage, the average grade of the ore is 19.53%. So that's an extremely high grade ore. So that's one of the highest grade ores in the world. And that 19%, in reality, it's actually worse than what it sounds, because there are some pockets within the MacArthur River area which are up to 80% uranium. And this stuff is extremely radioactive, and as I've heard at other presentations, it becomes exponentially more dangerous the higher the percentage of uranium ore. So for example, in the early days of uranium mining, 0.1% uranium ore grade would be considered a rich commercial find. And so when we have the health issues relating to the earliest mines, that was with the 0.1% levels of radiation. So now we've got 20% average ore levels here. So they'll have 20 times in terms of exponential. I can't explain that very well mathematically, but there's an exponential growth of the risks to the miners and the communities. Cigar Lake is the next largest ore body, and that's an underground mine, and that one has 209 million pounds at 17% average grade, so that's a similar. I'm not sure who the main players are at MacArthur River. I know at Cigar Lake the main player is Cameco. If anyone knows Cameco Corporation, they're one of the international mining giants. Originally they were Eldorado Nuclear, which was a Canadian Crown Corporation, amalgamated with SMDC, Saskatchewan Mining and Development Corporation, which was a provincial Crown Corporation. And part of the amalgamation and the change of name was to hide the terrible history that Eldorado Nuclear has had in Ontario and elsewhere. So they're in charge of Cigar Lake. McArthur River, I'm not sure.
It's a joint venture.
So it's a joint with Areva. And Areva is the other main player in Saskatchewan and also in other countries. And Areva is a French-owned mining giant, and they're actually owned by the French government through their military department, and also their nuclear energy department, which is all connected with the military. So we've got Key Lake. I think Key Lake is mostly being used for their tailings management, their mill and tailings management facility. There's not a huge amount of ore there. And you can see the low percentage of the ore that was at the Key Lake area, 0.52%. McLean Lake, that one is mostly mined out. They do have two new deposits that are being mined just within the last few months. They started the licensing process in 2009, and I think it's getting underway this year. But McLean Lake did have higher grade ore bodies, but that's mostly been mined out and stockpiled. And then Clough Lake, yeah, it says decommission. I don't know if the decommissioning has been completed. No, it's not yet completed. Sorry, I did want to say that, so the total uranium reserves are 633.5 million pounds. And the reason I bring that up is because, for example, at Cigar Lake, there was a series of floods. There have been 2 major floods at Cigar Lake, and it's put that project behind by approximately 5 years. And they now say they will be back on track for opening the mine in 2011. And they will have spent $1 billion to open up that mine. So why are they paying all that money? And it's because with the 239 million pounds of uranium available, that will translate into, I believe, about $20 billion or more.
$48 a pound in the current
Sorry.
spot price.
Okay, so 48.
But they'll have long-term contracts, so that won't be $48 a pound.
No, it'll be less.
It'll be less than that.
So $48 a pound. Anyway, it's probably in the range of $20 to $30 billion worth of uranium that they will be taking out. And so that's why they're so eager to keep going, even though they've had these floods. And McArthur River has also had floods, and now they're operating again. And I've heard anecdotal stories about what has happened to some of the miners that were in the facilities when the floods happened. And for example, I think this was at McArthur River, the sirens and the lights went off because they say the radioactivity levels are too high for the workers and they should exit the area, but because they wanted to keep trying to close some type of a safety door to keep out the water, they kept the miners working, and so they just kept shutting off the alarm, and it would come on again in a few minutes, and then they'd shut it off again, and they kept doing this for several hours. And so anecdotally, I heard a story that some of the people that were in the mine, their bodies were covered with some of the radioactive waters and up on their legs, and where the water touched them, they developed these strange rashes all over their legs, and some have subsequently died as a result of that exposure. But this has never come into the news. This was through stories of people in Saskatchewan whose friends or colleagues were working at the mine. So the Midwest Jet Pit, that was the tailings management facility that the Inter-Church Uranium Committee was trying to shut down or slow down by challenging the licensing court. And we won at the federal court trial division, so everything ground to a halt because the tailings management facility at the Jet Pit was designed for 3 or 4 different projects, including McLean Lake and Cigar Lake and Midwest. I'm not sure about McArthur River, if that was slated for there as well. And anyway, so it was within one day of the decision, the company that at that time it was called Kojima, but now Areva, they immediately issued an appeal to the Court of Appeal, and the Atomic Energy Control Board lawyers, now they're the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission, those lawyers immediately launched an appeal as well within the 2 or 3 days because they were so shocked that an environmental group would win against the Atomic Energy Control Board in court. And so after another couple of years of battle in the Federal Court of Appeal, it was overturned. And then we did take it to the Supreme Court of Canada, but they denied us leave without reasons, but presumably on the basis that this was not of national significance. And the reason we were fighting this pit, and you can see the pit on this slide. So at the very top, it's partially obstructed, but it's basically a giant hole in the ground created by the mining out of that ore body. And the ore body was actually underneath a marsh, so they drained the marsh, emptied out the ore, and then left this massive pit. And it's 5 football fields in diameter and 30 stories deep. And so the goal was, this was 1999 that we challenged the license. And they've since started filling it, and they said by 2014 that will be completely full. And when an initial review panel had looked at this tailings management facility, which is basically a glorified dump or hole in the ground, they said that this is potentially the most dangerous waste dump in Canada. So I think it is, like, I don't think it's potentially, I think it is. But so by 2014 it will be full, completely full. Right now it's about half full. And then they need to find new facilities in the province. So they have different options. One of them is to blast around that existing tailings management facility and to enlarge the hole so they can put more wastes, which I think is crazy, but they'll probably go for it. And then this slide was about pollution from the nuclear chain, and this was by a local artist and activist, Dave Geary, and it just shows different pathways from all the various components of the nuclear industry. This slide, this is from Bob Del Tradici. Yeah, they're from Elliott Lake, Ontario. I didn't have one of the Saskatchewan waste, but we have similar issues, for example, at Beaver Lodge, which is an abandoned mine that Eldorado Nuclear had run, and now it's gone to Saskatchewan, the people of Saskatchewan, to take responsibility for. And so this is, Saskatchewan Research Council has been given the project by the government of Saskatchewan, and an independent analyst stated that their proposal will not work because they have the wrong equipment and they don't really know what they're doing. And it really should be under Cameco's jurisdiction and responsibility to deal with their abandoned tailings. And just to give a little example of what are the implications of these kind of facilities. This was one of the findings that was brought out by one of the members of the Inter-Church Uranium Committee. So abnormalities in up to 80% of the lake chub fish in Greer and Marie lakes were found. So 80% of the fish were found to have cataracts in their eyes, edema or swelling, and distended abdomens. And this finding was by Golder Consultants from a report done in the year 2000. And then similarly, testing in 1997 revealed sediments in Beaver Lodge Lake at the north end of the tailings creeks to have radium concentrations of 10 to 90 times normal background levels. And the normal level of radium at the outflow of Greer Lake is not expected to be achieved for another 150 to 200 years. And large areas of vegetation have been devastated by radioactive sand and uranium mine tailings. So that's decades after the mines have closed. So unfortunately, that will be that's the legacy of the lower grade ore mines.